Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG Podcast. I'm Ty Glenn. Hope you guys are having a great Tuesday. In today's episode of the Hockey Talk TG Podcast, is going to recap both Game 3s of the Western and Eastern Conference Finals for the Stanley Cup Playoffs. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. We'll start off with recapping the Golden Knights and Avalanche Game 3 Western Conference Final game, and it was the VGK Vegas Golden Knights who will come out on top and win this one by a final score of 5-3 against the Colorado Avalanche in Game 3 on Sunday. They lead this best-of-7 series 3-0. Who would have expected this? Probably nobody else. Nobody had this on their prediction list for the Western Conference Final, not even myself, especially me being someone that chose the Avs to win this in 7 games, but I don't know. I wasn't expecting this to be the outcome of the series. Well, not really the outcome of the series isn't over yet, but I wasn't expecting this series to head in this direction. But yeah, the Avs are in a deep hole right now. But yeah, the Golden Knights. For the Golden Knights, though, they got this done in comeback fashion. They were down 3-0 in this game, and they scored 5 unanswered goals to come back and win the game by a final score of 5-3. And they are 1 win away from going back to the Stanley Cup Final for the second time in just 4 years, having, of course, made it in 2023. And they won the Stanley Cup that year against the Florida Panthers. It will be Tomas Hertl that will score the game-winning goal for the VGK Vegas Golden Knights. Scored the game-winning goal with 11 minutes and 39 seconds remaining in the third period. What a highlight reel goal it was. Deaking, Colorado defender, cutting to the net, scored on the backhand past Scott Wedgwood to get the Golden Knights to lead in the third period. Also had an assist for a 2-point night in this one. William Karlsson and Mark Stone also had a goal and assist for a 2-point night. And then we saw Keegan Kolesar, who of course had the game time goal. He was kind of pushed and shoved after it. Obviously the Avalanche showing some frustration for that. But anyways, he and Brett Howden also scored for the Golden Knights in this one. Brett Howden's goal was the empty netter to seal the deal in this one for the Golden Knights 5-3 win. And Carter Hart, who's looks so composed so far throughout the series. He made 32 saves on 35 shots faced in net in this one. And for the Colorado Avalanche, Gabriel Landeskog, Jack Drury, and Nazem Kadri scored for the Avs. Scott Wedgwood made 18 saves on 22 shots faced in net. And I don't know what to say about the Colorado Avalanche. I just thought maybe since they lost, the reason why they lost those first 2 games at home was because of the absence of Cale Makar. Now Cale Makar comes back in Game 3, and the Avs still don't get it done. So I'm just out of answers at this point for the Avalanche. Well, I could say it might take a huge miracle for them to come back and get in this series. That's probably what I would say. And there's only been 4 teams in NHL history that have came back from a 3-0 series deficit and won. First was the 1942 Toronto Maple Leafs. They came back from a 3-0 series deficit and won their series against the Detroit Red Wings. That happening in the Stanley Cup Final that year in 1942. The Maple Leafs are still the only team ever to complete the comeback in the Stanley Cup Final. We almost kind of saw it with the Edmonton Oilers in 2024 Stanley Cup Final, but couldn't get the job done in Game 7. But anyways, the second team be the 1975 New York Islanders as they came back from a 3-0 series deficit and won the series against the Pittsburgh Penguins in the second round of the 1975 Stanley Cup Playoffs. And then in 2010, the Philadelphia Flyers came back from a 3-0 series deficit against the Boston Bruins and won that series in 7 games. And kind of a little bit fun fact about this one, they were actually down 3-0 in Game 7, and then they came back and won that Game 7, obviously, by a final score of 4-3. So I thought that would be a fun fact to, just talk about on this segment on the Hockey Talk Teach podcast. And then the most recent team to do this is the 2014 LA Kings. They came back from a 3-0 series deficit and won the series against the San Jose Sharks in the first round of the 2014 Stanley Cup Playoffs, and they unfortunately went on to win the Stanley Cup that season. I say unfortunately because they had to get past the Chicago Blackhawks in the Western Conference Final to get to the Stanley Cup Final, beat the New York Rangers, and win the Stanley Cup. So, yeah. But the question is, can the Avalanche be the fifth team in NHL history to come back and win the series? Most people want to say yes because they don't want to see the Golden Knights in the Stanley Cup Final. For those who are new to hockey, probably the most hated team in the NHL that you will probably hear about is the Vegas Golden Knights. To me, I just feel like most people hate on the Golden Knights. So, Avalanche fans and probably hockey fans are hoping that the Avalanche have a miracle and can come back and win this series, but not sure if they're going to get the job done tonight or not, but we'll just have to see how everything goes. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, and obviously this is a team that won the President's Trophy back in the regular season, which to those who are new to hockey, the President's Trophy goes to the top team of the regular season. So the team that finishes first in the standings, finishes first in the league, that's who the President's Trophy has gone out to. And there's also been a thing called the President's Trophy curse. No team in over a decade or so has won the President's Trophy and the Stanley Cup since the Chicago Blackhawks got it done in 2013. So, Chicago Blackhawks were the last team to win both the President's Trophy and the Stanley Cup. No other team has got it done since. The Avalanche, they could be putting themselves on the list. But we'll just have to see what goes on in Game 4 because they enter Game 4 tonight facing elimination and with their backs against the wall. And to me, that's just very odd to see that from an offensive, creative team like the Colorado Avalanche. And in several stretches of, the series, the Avalanche have actually controlled the play. I mean, some people say the Golden Knights have controlled the play, but if you look at the stats, natural stat trick, and you guys know how much I love natural stat trick, the Avalanche have actually been in control for most of the play in this series. But Vegas has completely owned the moments that matter the most, and that's what matters in hockey. You got to own up to the big moments. Vegas has done that. So today we are going to break down what has gone wrong in this series for Colorado. Obviously, the main reason being the absence of Cale Makar. We'll probably also talk about why that wasn't enough for Cale Makar to return back in Game 3 and why Vegas has completely controlled the momentum of this series. And whether the Avalanche can somehow force this thing back into Denver with a huge Game 4 win on Tuesday night. The obvious storyline of this series was the absence of Cale Makar in Games 1 and 2. He made his return to the Avalanche lineup in Game 3. Obviously, was not enough for the Avalanche to come back and not enough for the Avalanche to win Game 3, obviously, because they blew a 3-0 lead. So, when Cale Makar was ruled out in Games 1 and 2, he was out for Game 1 and 2, it changed Colorado's defense. And I posted on my Instagram story, I kind of also talked about this off air. Without Cale Makar, the Avalanche defense looked weak. It just wasn't right. It was just very weak. I can't think of the word I used off air for it. It was very bleak, which kind of rhymes with weak. But anyways, it was very bleak for the Avalanche defense without Cale Makar, because Cale Makar strengthens the Avalanche defense. Like, he is the backbone for the Avalanche defense. He is the QB1 for the Avalanche defense. He is the QB1 on the Avalanche power play, because in the Avalanche power play games 1 and 2, that's not looked good without Cale Makar. Cale Makar controls that power play unit. He controls the special teams unit, and his absence in games 1 and 2 were the main reason why they lost. And the Avalanche breakout game looked slower. They looked less clean and way more vulnerable to Vegas' aggressive forecheck. And the Golden Knights, they attacked Colorado's defense relentless in transition. They put sustained pressure on them in games 1 and 2 without Cale Makar. So that just kind of shows how much of an impact Cale Makar is in the Avalanche's lineup every night. And the overall possession numbers in games 1 and 2 for the Avalanche were not terrible. They're actually really good. But the defensive lapses that they had is what cost them in those first 2 games. It's not like Colorado has never had the puck and wasn't generating offense, because they actually were generating offense. They had their chances, but they couldn't finish on them. And I talked about a few minutes ago, and off air, and I'm pretty sure PK Subban has said this on First Take or so, or Eric Johnson has said this on Sports Center or Pat McAfee show, that the Golden Knights finish in the big moments. They control the middle of the ice, and we haven't seen the Avalanche finish in those big moments. But the offense, they actually generate a little bit of offense in those first 2 games. We'll start off obviously with game 1, where they finished with over 60% of the shot attempts at 5-on-5 play. They controlled nearly 64% of the scoring chances, and they even had over 72% of the high danger scoring chances. And on paper, those are winning numbers. But like I said, one thing about hockey games, this is something that every hockey fan should know. And if you don't know, it's okay. If you're new to hockey, that's okay. I will tell you. One thing about hockey games is that they're decided in big moments. And Vegas has completely dominated the biggest moments in this series. And that trend continued on in Game 2. Where, again, Colorado had controlled large stretches of play. They actually scored the first goal of the game in Game 2, and I talked about before heading into that Game 2, where the first 10 minutes were very, very crucial, and I think they scored their first goal. They did score the first goal of the game. I do know that, but I don't know if I think it happened in the first 10 minutes. I'll just have to go back and look at that Game 2 again. Let's see. Sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. Okay, yep, they did score. Well, actually, they did not score in the first 10 minutes, but they got the first goal of the game, and they didn't let the Golden Knights score the first goal in the first 10 minutes. So, even though they did score first, but it wasn't in the first 10 minutes of the hockey game in Game 2, but at least they didn't let the Golden Knights get on the board. So that just, again, shows my point how very crucial the first 10 minutes are. But they did get the first goal of the game, and then they blew it in Game 2, obviously. Vegas buried their chances. They capitalized on Colorado's mistakes. And that's where the series has become so frustrating for Colorado Avalanche fans, because the underlying numbers suggest that this series should be competitive. We expected this series to be competitive. We expected this to be a 7-game series. And I don't know if it could be, if it can still be a 7-game series. At least Avalanche fans are hoping for them to come back and, get in the series. But it's one game at a time. Like Game 4 is tonight. You're going to have to, like I said, first 10 minutes are going to be very crucial, especially to this Avalanche team who has their backs against the walls. But, we're just going to have to see. But let's jump into Game 3 now. Let's go to Game 3. Cale Makar, he returns to the Avalanche lineup. Avalanche have a 3-0 lead, and the defense looked great. The offense was cooking. Top 2 lines was cooking in that one. But then they blew it, and we don't see that from a team like the Colorado Avalanche, but they blew the lead, the Golden Knights storm all the way back, and they win this game 5-3. So now this series is all about belief, and honestly, Vegas looks like the team that's completely in control, and they have, even though they're up 3-0 in the series, I feel like they have less pressure on them, though. I think it's the Avalanche who have the biggest pressure on them heading into this one. And I think a huge difference in this series and where it's at is the composure. The Golden Knights have looked very calm and so demeanor in every major moment. Whenever Colorado pushes, Vegas responds. Whenever the Avalanche make a mistake, Vegas takes advantage. And this Avalanche team has looked rattled once that adversity hits. And this is a team that, again, has had major expectations coming into the Stanley Cup Playoffs. I mean, these were one of the top three. The Avalanche won the top 3 teams favored to win the Stanley Cup. Because they won the President's Trophy in the regular season. They were the Stanley Cup favorites, not like their underdog team. They weren't an underdog team. They were the best team in the regular season. They were the best team in the league. And so to see them down 3-0, I, pretty much like every other hockey fan, is in shock to that. Like, that is crazy. That is crazy to think about. Now, I think heading on throughout the series, I think injuries is going to be a huge factor for this one because we did see Nathan MacKinnon go down. I think he appeared to be injured after taking a blocked shot. I believe that was in I want to say either the second or third period of Game 3 where he took a blocked shot to the skate. It was like the ankle to his skate, and he went down after that, and then he went back to the team locker room, and then he came back on the bench. So I was kind of thinking, is he going to be playing Game 4? He probably might play Game 4, though, because he did went to the locker room for 1 minute, and then he came back onto the bench. But I'm telling you guys, when he went down, I was just, in shock because first the Avalanche are without Cam McCarr for games 1 and 2. Now Cam McCarr returns for Game 3, and then you have your other top player and Nathan MacKinnon go down, and that's going to put some very much concern and frustration for the Avalanche fans. But luckily, he returned back to the bench after going to the locker room for a little bit. So he was still on the bench from what I saw. He wasn't out for the rest of the game. He still played in Game 3 after taking that block shot to the ankle to the skate. So he was still in for Game 3. But at least that puts a sigh of relief for Avalanche fans. Now the question is, can they get back into this series? And it's going to be a tough climb for this one. It's going to be a tough climb for the Colorado Avalanche, but we'll see if they can get it done. But like I said, the Golden Knights look so much confident heading into Game 4. Heading into Game 4, the Golden Knights are the confident, better team. They don't need to worry about anything. The more pressure is on the Colorado Avalanche to win Game 4 and to get back in this series. If Colorado wins Game 4 in Vegas, like I said, it's possible that they can make a series comeback. They can be the 5th team in NHL history to go down 3-0 in the series and come back and win the series 4-3. I can see that a possibility if they win Game 4 tonight. But if Vegas wins Game 4, then they're on to the Stanley Cup Final. And shockingly, this will be a sweep for Colorado Avalanche, and they will be another victim as a team who has not won the President's Trophy and the Stanley Cup in the same year. So I think what has to change into Game 4 for Colorado is the Stars need to dominate. We saw that in Game 3, at least in the first period of Game 3, where the Stars have dominated and they took control of the game in the first period before the ceiling exploded for the Colorado Avalanche, and then they lost the game. We need to see that for a full 60 minutes of hockey if they want a chance to win Game 4. And then need to see Nate. I was going to say Nathan McKinnon needs to step up, but I don't know if he's going to be playing Game 4. I think he is going to play Game 4 because, like I said, it's not like he went to the locker room and then just didn't come back for the game after taking that puck to the ankle or to the skate in Game 3, because he did go to the locker room and then he was back on the bench. So seemed like he looked okay. And then the second thing is the Avalanche need to finish their chances. So I talked about before how the Avalanche are, being a more offensive team in terms of stats wise, but they're not finishing and they're not executing their chances. And I talked about how Vegas has controlled those big moments and they finish their chances and they take over in those big moments. The Avalanche need to do some of that in Game 4. And the third thing is, also Cale Makar has to control the transition the way only he can. So he returned for Game 3. Obviously wasn't enough for the Avalanche to win Game 3, but if Cale Makar can get back to playing Cale Makar hockey, then they might have a chance. And I like Cale Makar. He's one of my favorite defensemen in the league. One of my favorite players to watch. But obviously the return for Game 3. And Cale Makar has missed some time. But if he can go back to playing Cale Makar hockey, then it's possible. It is very possible that the Avalanche can win Game 4. So, and then second thing is, with Cale Makar coming back, they had to clean up those mistakes that the Avalanche made when they were without Cale Makar in Games 1 and 2. And I'm pretty well confident they can, especially since the pressure is on them to win Game 4. And yeah, those are basically all my thoughts for the Avalanche, to keys to Game 4 for them and how Game 4 should turn out for them, for the Colorado Avalanche. Let me know you guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Do you think the Golden Knights close out this series in a sweep, just like the New York Knicks did to the Cleveland Cavaliers last night? Jalen Brunson and the Knicks swept the Cavs. Can the Golden Knights do the same against the Colorado Avalanche in Game 4 tonight in Vegas? I don't know. Or do the Avalanche force a Game 5 back in Denver Thursday night? Let me know you guys' thoughts in the comments down below. If you are watching on YouTube or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please leave your comments down below. I'll be happy to respond and read them and respond the best way I can. Now let's go to Game 3 of the Carolina Hurricanes Montreal Canadiens Eastern Conference Finals Series, as Andrei Svechnikov scores the overtime game-winning goal in the Carolina Hurricanes 3-2 overtime win over the Montreal Canadiens. This is the second straight overtime win for the Canes in this series, because they won Game 2 at home on Saturday night. Nikolai Ehlers with the overtime game-winning goal in that one, and Andrei Svechnikov gets the overtime game-winning goal in this one, and the Hurricanes lead this best-of-7 series 2-1. Andrei Svechnikov scored the game-winning goal with 5 minutes and 6 seconds remaining in overtime to seal the deal. Great assist from Seth Jarvis as he took a pass from him above the right circle, scored through the screen in front by Sebastian Aho for the overtime game-winning goal. And the Hurricanes, this is the fun fact about them, they are now 5-0 in overtime in this postseason. So they have no problem with playing in overtime. Shane Gostisbehere, Taylor Hall had the other goals for the Carolina Hurricanes, and Freddie Anderson, who's had, I think this whole entire Carolina Hurricanes team in general has just been playing great ever since that Game 1 outburst that they had when they lost Game 1 6-2. The Hurricanes have been playing Carolina Hurricanes hockey again. But Freddie Anderson, he made 10 saves on 12 shots faced in net. And for the Montreal Canadiens, Lane Hudson and Mike Matheson scored for the Habs. Jacob Dobes made 35 saves on 38 shots faced in net. Overall takeaways from this series, though, like I said, the big thing for this one, the Carolina Hurricanes are starting to look like themselves again. They are starting to play Carolina Hurricanes hockey. They are starting to play hockey that we know as hockey fans that the Hurricanes can play. That game one was a fluke loss. It was a rough start. They had a long layoff, and that affected their timing and rhythm. So they had 12 days off because they last played on May 9th, and then game one of the Eastern Conference Final, I believe, was on May 21st. May 21st? Yep, it was on May 21st, and the Hurricanes last played on May 9th. So, but after that fluky loss in game one, the Hurricanes are starting to look like themselves again. And they have completely flipped the momentum of this series with back-to-back overtime game-winning goals. And that's why they're in front 2-1 in this series. And that has to do with the relentless pressure, the heavy puck possession, their aggressive forechecking. We talked about before how the Hurricanes love to have the forechecking game going, the transition game going. That's the kind of hockey they like to play. Excuse me. That's the kind of hockey that they like to play. They're constant in ozone time, and they have complete territorial control. And as you look at those natural stat trick numbers, you guys know how much I love natural stat trick. Carolina has absolutely dominated play over the last two games. In game two, analytically, especially that, they controlled over 64% of the shot attempts, over 72% of the shot pressure, and nearly 68% of the scoring chances, and almost 67% of the high danger scoring chances in game two. Game two is in Raleigh, by the way. Montreal had only 12 shots on goal for the entire game, and in game three, the Canes were more dominant offensively as well. They finished with nearly 67% of the shot attempts and over 76% of the high danger scoring chances. And that's not just controlling the play, that's suffocating the team right there. And Montreal, for their part, they are very fortunate that this series isn't worse right now. And like I said, they like to play the underdog, so they don't mind if people kind of just talk trash about them or so, because they know that they can bounce back in moments where they feel like their backs are against the walls. But at least they're not down 3-1 in the series. They're very lucky to still have a chance to be in the series and get the series win. And they deserve a whole lot of credit because they continue to capitalize on opportunities in keeping the games close. But Carolina has dictated the pace. Ever since the game one loss, I feel like they have dictated the pace of this series. So that game one, it was the rusty game one. That's out the window now. But after game one, the Hurricanes, like I said, they gone back to playing Carolina Hurricanes hockey. Their defensive structure wasn't. Their defensive structure in game one was not sharp. Their forecheck wasn't aggressive enough in game one. I'm talking about game one, by the way. Their transition game was not good. And Montreal took advantage immediately with those 4 first-period goals in that 6-2 win. But, again, ever since then, Rod Brendamore's team, Carolina Hurricanes, have completely settled back into its identity and been playing Carolina Hurricanes hockey. And I feel like that's the biggest takeaways in this series. They are doing a lot of good things of late in this series. They're spending more time in the ozone. They're forcing those turnovers. They're limiting Montreal's transition opportunities, and they're taking advantage of the Montreal Canadiens in this series, like shift after shift. They are taking advantage. They have the upper hand so far against the Montreal Canadiens in this series. And I can't remember if it was them or Montreal that had 28 It was probably Montreal because the Hurricanes were out shooting them. The Canadiens had 28 block shots. So they're still trying to, make this a series against the Carolina Hurricanes. But again, it's going to be tough since the Hurricanes have now found their rhythm again. Game 3, perfect example. The Hurricanes controlled the majority of the game flow into Game 3. They found a way to stay composed in the biggest moments. And again, we talked about them being 5-0 in overtime this postseason. So you can see that confidence that they have in those tight games when they do go to overtime. And for the Canadiens, they're still good. They're still a good team. They're still dangerous offensively. They still have a great offense as well. But it's going to be a tough task for them against a team like the Carolina Hurricanes. It's not Tampa. This is not Buffalo. This is the Carolina Hurricanes that we're talking about. One of the best special teams in the league. One of the best offensive teams in the league. So it's going to be a hard game it's going to be a hard-fought series for the Habs against the Canes, especially since the Hurricanes have gone back to playing their style of hockey. So we'll just have to see how the series will go. Heading into Game 4, the pressure is going to be on Montreal, especially since they're down 2-1 in the series. They could be down 3-1 in the series if they, if the Hurricanes win Game 4. Montreal could be in some serious trouble because the Hurricanes have all the momentum heading back home to Game 5 with them being up 3-1 in the series. If that does tend to happen. But if the Habs win Game 4 tomorrow night, then this could still be a series. But they just have to find a way to generate more offensive zone possession time against the Hurricanes. Because right now, this series is being played entirely at Carolina's pace. And when the Hurricanes are controlling pace like this, they become one of the hardest teams in hockey to beat. And at this point, the Hurricanes look calm, structured, and fully back in rhythm after their Game 1 breakdown. And through those last 2 games, they look like the better and more complete team in this series. So let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments. Do you think the Habs can even up the series at 2 games apiece in Game 4 Wednesday night? Or do the Hurricanes put a stranglehold on the Montreal Canadiens and go up 3-1 this series and have the chance to go back to the Stanley Cup Final for the first time since 2006? And that was the year where they won their first and only Stanley Cup and got it done against the Edmonton Oilers. I think this could be the year that the Hurricanes return back to Stanley Cup Final. Obviously, the last couple of Eastern Conference Finals have not gone well for them, but I think, like I said, this year it's the year that they get over the hump and they break that Eastern Conference Final curse and they get back into the Stanley Cup Final. But we'll just have to see how Game 4 go. I think Game 4 and Game 5 will determine who gets to the Stanley Cup Final. Game 4, because the Canadiens still have a chance to still be in the series. They can win Game 4, series tied at 2, then Game 5, they're up 3-2 in the series and have the chance to go to the Stanley Cup Final on home ice. The Hurricanes, they win Game 4, then they can have a most likely chance at going to the Stanley Cup Final, putting a stranglehold on the Canadiens, going up 3-1 in the series, and like I said, having a chance to go back to the Stanley Cup Final if they do win Game 4, and they can just close it out in Game 5 at home. Just have to see how everything will go. But only one game, obviously, on the slate for today. That is Game 4 of the Western Conference Finals between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Colorado Avalanche. That game will come on at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time on ESPN. The Golden Knights lead that best-of-7 series 3-0. A win for Vegas. They advance to the Stanley Cup Final for the 3rd time in their franchise history after last making it before, like in 2018. That was their first year in the Stanley Cup Final. That was their inaugural season. Lost the series in 5 games to the Washington Capitals. 2023, they go to the Stanley Cup Final again. They beat the Florida Panthers in 5 games. And now they had the chance to go to the Stanley Cup Final for the 3rd time in their franchise history and the 2nd time in in the past 4 years. A win for Colorado, and it's Game 5 back in Denver on Thursday night. The pressure, like I said, is on the Colorado Avalanche to win Game 4. They have more pressure on them for Game 4 than the Golden Knights do. So I wouldn't be worried about the Golden Knights if I were just a random hockey fan. And I wouldn't be worried about the Golden Knights. And we are random hockey fans, but again, I wouldn't be worried about the Golden Knights heading into Game 4. I would be more worried about the Colorado Avalanche, since they are the number 1 team in the league, and they came into this series, they came into this playoffs in general with massive expectations, and they can't just blow it out right here. They need this win more than the Golden Knights do. So I will be worried about the Colorado Avalanche in this Game 4 tonight than I would be with the Vegas Golden Knights. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Hockey Talk with TG Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. Really do appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe button on the Hockey Talk with TG Podcast YouTube channel. Make sure to follow the Hockey Talk TG Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Both of you guys have a great rest of your day. Keep God first as always. Be blessed. I'll see you guys next time for another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG Podcast. Take care.